Hey guys, welcome Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, ready to fire a few questions off. I have just given them a bit of a rundown on the format, so we'll just go around the room once you've made your opening statement for questions. So with that, Dan, I'll hand it across to you.
Cool. Thank you very much, mate. And thanks for joining us this morning, guys. I'd first just like to say a huge thank you to Netball Western Australia and West Coast Fever for the opportunity to be appointed as the new head coach at the club. Incredibly grateful for this opportunity. It's a wonderful challenge and certainly very proud to be part of the Fever family for the next couple of years. I'd like to say a huge congratulations to outgoing head coach Stacey Marinkovic on all she's achieved with the club during her incredible tenure. A huge amount of respect and admiration for what she's been able to do with the playing list and the squad and the culture that she's created within the program. And I feel incredibly privileged as a new head coach coming in to be able to inherit something in such a positive place. So great respect for Stacey and what she's achieved and really looking forward to succeeding her and honouring the legacy of what's gone before at the club in terms of the performances on the court and what's been created with the group under her tutelage. So well done to Stace. One of my main priorities in this job is as I touched on before, is to honour what's been in place before and honour the legacy that has got West Coast Fever to the position that it has and find new ways to add value and evolve the program. So really looking forward to the journey ahead with the club and ensuring that we can have some continued years of sustained success. So really proud to be part of the family and great to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Jenny, I see you had your hand raised first there. Would you like to start us?
No, look, that's fine. Mitch can go first. He always asks the good questions.
All right. Hey, Dan, congratulations. First off, I suppose there's a lot of jobs ahead of you, high performance team and all that, but you right now, currently, and I know that it's probably going to happen quickly, you don't have a playing list at all to coach. That's obviously going to be your first priority, I'm assuming. And how do you go about that, obviously, from hotel quarantine right now?
Yeah, great question, mate. I think myself and every other coach in the league in a very similar position, and obviously the recruitment window opening weekend just gone. So all hell breaking loose across the league, I'm sure. But I know from our perspective here at West Coast Fever, we're really keen to have as much stability and as much consistency as possible. And I know the players have had a pretty difficult year in terms of what they've had to manage, but I have so much respect for the way that they've conducted themselves and all of that type of thing. So really excited for hopefully having a really consistent lineup and getting stuck into securing the team. That's certainly short-term focus for sure.
Is your first phone call or Zoom call to Janelle Fowler in Jamaica and seeing what her plans are?
Well, there's a number of calls that have taken place and will continue to take place over the next couple of days. So I think we're in a really good position, and in the players, you know, from what I can gather in the conversations I've had, are really invested in being part of this club in the future. So we're hopeful the club is in a good place and really optimistic and confident that we can continue where we left off this season.
But you do come from an outside view. Is there anything playing list wise that you feel has been maybe lacking in your opinion that you need to add?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think, you know, the luxury of the team performing so well, particularly the past 2 years, they're as good as any other team in the competition. So it's really about identifying where some of the growth areas and opportunities might be. And, you know, the discussions we're having around list management can be simple things from, is it an improvement in culture? Is it a shift in game plan, or is it personnel? And so they're the robust discussions we're having. Nothing is off the table at this point in time. So we'll see where it plays out. But from my perspective, what's currently in place is absolutely good enough. And the challenge will be, can we add value to that? And what do we believe is the next step? So some great, robust discussions taking place, and we'll see where that lands over the coming weeks.
The final one from me, you're one player you have worked with very closely already is Donnell Wallam. Obviously a talent. We saw what she did for Leeds and helping you get to the finals. There's going to be other clubs wanting a shooter. Is she someone you're going to try and lock in on a full-time contract?
She's someone that's certainly within the mix of what we're looking at, and certainly someone we'll consider and has been considered at the club for a number of years. She's made great progress over in the UK, and I loved working with her. We formed a great partnership as coach and athlete, and she is a star of the future and on the improve. So, you know, we'll see where that lands with her, but she's certainly a consideration, absolutely.
Thanks, Dan. Congratulations, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Mitch. Maybe back to you now, Jenny.
Okay, thanks. Dan, congratulations. It'll be great to have you here in WA. First question, it's been a really emotionally draining time for the club in the last few years with COVID, salary cap, you know, some grand final appearances. How do you sort of work with the players or address that with the players? Because no doubt that's had an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the discussions I've had with the players have been really enlightening, to be honest. And I certainly think there's a real need to have a bit of a deload and a release, particularly after this year. I think we saw probably in the preliminary final that it was one game too many for the team, and the emotional weight and baggage they had to carry was quite consuming for them. But I look at that too and think that the resilience within the group that they demonstrated this year is something that I really want to align myself with. So while there'll need to be a break and a deload and a refresh and a refocus, I hope that some of the things that we can do within the environment to freshen it up and to spark some slight changes and present something a little bit different to what they've been used to doing for a number of years is enough just to reinvigorate them in some capacity. But you know, the number one attribute you need in high performance sport, particularly in Suncorp Super Netball, is resilience. And these players have it in abundance. So I don't see any issues with it being carried on to the next year. I think they'll be relieved that it's, you know, this season is parked and they can now focus on taking a break and move into a new era as well.
And Dan, you've been on a journey of sustained growth over the last few years. What will you bring to West Coast Fever?
Look, I think there's a number of different elements that I'll bring, and you know, in a real simplistic term, it's a new voice, it's a new coach, it's a new character, it's a new presence within the environment, and sometimes that shift is all a team might need to spark a little bit of extra growth as well. I'm an attacking specialist coach with a real eye for the shooting circle. I've come from a background of very many different diverse coaching experiences. So the way I lead will be a little bit different. The way I head coach will be a little bit different. The way I engage and have relationships with players will be naturally different. So for me, I'm looking to bring my wholehearted self into the program. And you know, the recruitment process itself has been so extensive and robust that the whole process of this job was to find the right fit for Fever, but also for me as the applicant to discover if Fever was the right fit for me. So I'll be coming into this job with everything that I've, I guess, identified as what are my strengths and where my growth areas sit. And, you know, I'm really confident that Fever is a place where I can thrive as a high performance professional. And in doing that, hopefully see those that I'm working with and the athletes as well thrive equally as well.
Terrific. Well, thanks, Dan, and welcome again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jenny. Joe, across to you.
Thanks, guys, and congratulations, Dan. Look, as you touched on before with the significant legacy that Stacey Marinkovic leaves behind, there's obviously going to be some significant pressure from day one. Obviously, having been with the Leeds Rhinos for a couple of years before this, how has that time in England, I guess, shaped you? And how are you looking to apply those lessons you've learned over there in your new role?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. The last 3.5 years for me, once I left Australia at the end of or middle 2018, I made a real conscious effort to get as much diverse experience as possible to really broaden my skill set. And I think, you know, one of the biggest challenges we face as head coaches is sometimes we can be stuck in the same environment for a long time and not really get the exposure elsewhere. And for me, I've had a bit of a roller coaster of a journey in different roles, but that's actually been the best training ground for me to evolve as a high performance professional. So, you know, I've had great success in the UK and really used the opportunity to refine my craft and really put in place a lot of the learnings that I've had in previous experiences in Australia and really consolidate some of those philosophies, those leadership methodologies. And, you know, the reality is now I feel really ready for this level of competition back in Australia. And I feel like it's the right time in my career, and probably more importantly, that Fever's the right place for me to take that next step. And, you know, one of the really appealing parts about West Coast Fever is the depth and professionalism within the high performance support team and the programming and the resourcing. And when you have those elements at your disposal, you can have a lot of confidence that this is a place for you to be your best. And, you know, I've certainly seen that in Stacey's growth as a coach, and she's been a huge advocate for the program. So for me, I think it's the natural next step to get to this level and to have an opportunity at a club that is in a really good place. And yeah, keen to see where we can go together.
Great. And obviously you've got quite the history, not just as a coach, but as a player as well. given the recent men's and mixed championship that they held over in England, and obviously all the ongoing conversations around netball at the Olympics. I'm curious to know what kind of role you see men's netball having in the future of the sport, and I guess in Western Australia as well.
Well, I think, to be honest, Western Australia is probably one of the best states, if not the best state in the country, in how they engage their male athletes, and the alignment they have through the Wannell program with the men's teams aligned with the women's program is better than any other state in the country. So for me, as a male netball that's come through the pathway and fortunate enough to captain Victoria in Australia, it's music to my ears to see how well the men are embraced over here in the West. And, you know, there's great engagement too with Fever, with the Western Australian men's team in the training space. And it's been one of the huge instigators in the success of the team as well, to train against those guys. So for me, I've always seen the value of men in our sport, and I'm really proud to be a male coach at the top level, and I've never seen myself any different to anybody else, but certainly know there's a space for men in netball just like anybody else. So keen to see the men's game keep growing, because it can only enhance the women's game, which is on fire at the moment.
Fantastic. Thanks. And yeah, best of luck for season 22.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Derek. Garrett, I'll hand over to you, mate.
Thanks, Steve. Congratulations, Dan, and welcome to Perth. Just can you run us through the process of how you set your appointment? Was it something that you were looking for, or you obviously had a good season with Leeds, or did the club, the Fever, sort of seek you out and start discussions that way?
Yeah, it was a really extensive process that started probably back around March with an expression of interest from the club and seeing what coaches that were qualified that were out in the market. And obviously for me at that point in time, I'd been living overseas for 3 years and we're right in the middle of a global pandemic. So the call to come home was always a big pull. But it was a very difficult, I guess, period for me, because what I'd built at Leeds Rhinos was from the ground up. There was nothing in place when I took over that position, and built a really, successful high performance program, a team from scratch, and really developed some great talent and made the finals in our very first year. So I was thriving as a high performance professional. But for me, the global pandemic certainly put a lot of things in perspective around the importance of home. And, to not be able to get home in 3 years and see your family is really difficult. But the challenge for me too, when I left Australia in 2018, the goal was to get the experience that I felt that I wanted and needed to be able to reposition myself to come back to Australia when the time was right. And I really did feel like the time was right, but more importantly, that the place was right for me. So I went through the formal application process, and that, as I said, started back with an expression of interest in March and really only finished recently. So it was extensive, it was robust. But at the end of the day, it was to determine if I was the right fit for the club and if the club was the right fit for me. And because it was so extensive, feel great confidence for both parties that we've landed in the right position. So really proud to be here and know it's the right place, and confident that, we can achieve some great things together.
Just with the salary cap issue, and I'm sure you're going to be asked about this a lot as time goes, do you feel that for you to come in as a complete outsider to that black cloud over the club that's been there for a little while gives the Fever a chance to, again, push forward and put that period of its drama behind it?
Yeah, look, I think so. And, the reality is we accept that it's going to be something that's discussed for a long, long time, but certainly not something that we invest too much of our energy or attention in. For me, it's been and gone. It's historical now. And yes, it's a part of Fever's story. But from my perspective, I've always more interested in what the response was from that incident. And I've seen an organisation galvanise and grow. I've seen a playing group represent and demonstrate what it means to play for West Coast Fever. And for me, they're people I want to align myself and work with and go shoulder to shoulder and toe to toe with in the heat of the battle. So while it is something that is a part of, the talking points, I'm sure it's not something we're focused on, and certainly has, no space in my mind in detracting me from what I want to achieve and do here with this great club.
And just lastly from me, of the playing group, have you had a chance to reach out to anyone and say good day, or has anyone come forward to talk to you yet?
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with athletes yesterday just before getting on a plane. So it was a bit of a mad rush, but connected in with a couple of them, which was great to hear their thoughts and their excitement. And just really pleased to get going with them and see where it all kind of takes off. And obviously there's a lot of conversations happening over the next coming days. Nothing confirmed yet with the list, but it's obviously in a pretty good place at this stage. And keen to get to know the athletes and the staff more. The reality is I've got about 30 relationships to build from the ground up, and relationships is my number one value as a coach. So I'll be busy doing what I love, but what a better job to do.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Garrett. And welcome, Brittany. I'll hand over to you.
Congratulations, Dan. I think a lot of us have been watching your career bloom over in the UK, so we're really pleased to see you come back to Oz.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I was listening to an interview you did with Sue Gordian talking about how when you took on the Adelaide Thunderbirds coaching role, that it wasn't the right time or place for you to step into an Australian head coaching role. So what is it about the Fever that you think makes it the right time and place for you now?
Yeah, I think it's 5 to 6 years on. So I'm 5 to 6 years older. I'm wiser. I'm more experienced. I've experienced more environments and more roles. And so the depth and diversity of my experiences has grown dramatically. I've grown as a human being since that time as well. And I think it's really important that, you know, for me, I had to do a lot of reflection after the Adelaide experience around it, because it was really challenging and probably one of the toughest experiences I've ever had in my life. But I'm actually so grateful that that was my very first experience as a rookie head coach, because it probably doesn't get much tougher than that, but you learn so much about yourself, the industry, what it takes, what you need around you to be successful. And, you know, I think for me, again, I'm always driven by the response, and my response since that time has been all about continued and sustained growth. So for me, I wouldn't have applied for this job if I didn't think that it was the right time and I was ready. And now I feel like there's good synergy between those elements. And like I touched on before, the infrastructure at West Coast Fever, the high performance program, the talent within the playing list, the organisation itself, I really feel like it's in a great place to support their head coach. And that's why it's the right place for me. And, you know, I reflect back on the interview process, and there was no question that wasn't asked to make sure that I was stepping into something that I was confident that was going to see me bring out my best. So I'm really excited by that, and can't wait to get started.
You've already touched on the fact that you've got to have a lot of conversations and build some relationships with players, but what will you do about assistant coaching roles? Will you keep who's there at the moment, or do you need to make decisions about that as well?
Well, the first step is to actually meet people in person, and that won't happen until I get out of quarantine. But, you know, my whole approach from the entire start of the application process to this very point in time is about sustaining what's currently in place and consolidating everything that is good about West Coast Fever. This team was one win away from another grand final, a couple goals away from a premiership. So wholesale changes are not required by any stretch of the imagination. So for me, if I can add some subtle values here and there in different elements, fantastic. But retention of what's in place is really important to me. And that's part of the reason why I want to step into it. I can learn so much from them, and they can also, you know, take, I'm sure, so many things from me as well from my experiences. So consolidation and stability, absolutely high on my agenda.
You touched on a little bit before about the question that Joey asked about WA having a great pathway for men's netball and the links that they have back to their elite pathways for women there. We know that Netball Australia wants to push netball for the Olympics in Brisbane in 2032. Do you think having a male head coach back in Super Netball will sort of help the sport grow that aspect of the game, because we don't have many men around Super Netball at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think there's certainly an element of visibility, like in any sporting code, and diversity, I think, in sport is critically important, and sport should represent society. And I think having a male coach amongst the ranks is good for that representation. However, it's not everything. It's not the be all and end all. I'm here because I'm a high performance successful coach, and they're the elements that I really pride myself on. But I do hope that, you know, I'm an inspiration to other young boys out there that love the game, that want to go through the pathway. I started playing this game as an 8-year-old kid because my mum played, and I haven't stopped being involved in the game since that time. It's a huge passion in my life, and I'm incredibly lucky that I can have a career in something that I love to do. and hope that there are more like me out there in the years to come. So I would love to see netball in the Olympics. There's a lot of work the sport needs to do to get that, and then probably a couple of powerhouse countries around the world that need to start playing it and being successful at it. But there's a lot of obstacles to jump over, but it's not impossible. Therefore, yeah, certainly an advocate for growing the game in all facets and making it the most inclusive and accessible sport in Australia.
Great. Just one more from me. Jenny touched a little bit before about the difficulties West Coast Fever has faced this year, particularly externally when it comes to public perception. So what are you hoping that you can do to turn that around in your role in terms of the way that people view the club from the outside?
Well, I think it's all about what we do on the court and how we represent the club, and people are always going to have their opinions and people are always going to have their perceptions, and sometimes perceptions don't meet reality and sometimes perceptions are reality, and that's up to people to determine in their own way. For me, I'm going to be really invested in my players and my people and my club and my team, and also uniting the organisation from Netball WA to West Coast Fever and connecting them as best I possibly can within my role. And I know that that's a really important element of the business too. So I'm very much a united leader and a collaborative leader in how I work. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we can really do well here. And I think too, we want to make some subtle adjustments in how we play the game, but more importantly, it's because we want to make the subtle adjustments to make us better at what we do. So I'd like to think that by the way we operate, behave and represent is what we're going to focus on. And people will have their opinions and so be it. But for me, my focus sits on us being our very best versions of ourselves and being the best possible team we can in all facets of what being a team actually means.
Thank you so much. Good luck with the role.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. Next up, we've got Ellie. Thanks, Ellie.
Hi, Dan. First off, congratulations on the role. So you did touch on before that there were lots of lessons learned through your time overseas. What were some of those lessons from both a tactical and player management perspective?
Yeah, I think the lessons probably came before overseas, but was able to probably implement those types of things within my jobs that came after my previous experiences in Australia. And I think it's a lot of the lessons come from your own personal growth and your own experiences. So it might not be necessarily a strategy or a tactic, but it might be how you manage a program. It might be what you need to support your own health and well-being better. It might be what you need around you as a head coach to thrive and be successful. It might be how you manage a difficult situation or circumstance or whatever it might be. So it's a collective of all those types of things that naturally come with experience and through exposure. So for me, it's pretty multifaceted in that regard. There's been wholesale growth from me in all areas of being a high performance coach, a high performance professional, and also a 37-year-old young man as well. So they're all connected. And, you know, if you're the same person you were 5 years ago, you're probably in a bit of trouble. So I'm pretty excited to have had that growth and that gaining of knowledge and wisdom through my experiences.
Thanks, and congrats again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellie. We'll just open up to any final questions. If anyone has anything else to add. No, and if not, we will thank Dan very much for his time this morning. As I said, I'll distribute the audio and vision to everyone so that you can have that for your use. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.